Good morning. It's Tom Padula from TomPadulaTV on YouTube and Insegna Booksellers. And this morning is program 51 of World History by me live here on Facebook. And we also have, we have a new beginning in a way, because we finished off last week. We had lesson 50, so we're looking forward to 51 to the end, to the 21st century, basically, in the next 50 lessons, maybe. We'll see how we go. But today is Thursday, the 6th of October, 2022. And, we are in the middle of spring almost here in Melbourne, and we're enjoying some lovely weather with a bit of rain, a bit of sunshine, a bit of cold, a bit of warmth. A very youngish year is beginning again, and it will lead us into summer and autumn. So, maybe there's a renewal all around. Okay. What we're going to do today is basically continue with world history in the Renaissance period in Europe. And then, of course, we'll go to China, North America, our Before the Invasion series as well. Bunja Patterson, Henry Lawson, and my trip. There you are. It's becoming very familiar now. And I suppose that a lot of people would say, well, it's too predictable now. You'll have to wait until further developments for new material. But this is important because we were discussing the church, the role of the church during the Middle Ages. And, it's an interesting concept, and also the role of the Pope and the Emperor, and how the Pope actually humiliated the Emperor at one stage, but things do change over time. During the last few months, I've been following wonderful documentaries and also series on Netflix and YouTube, and we are very lucky today to have such ready-made information. And the fact that I was doing world history and I was complaining in my initial lessons that there wasn't the focus wasn't on world history in our schools. Well, it may not be in our schools, but obviously in the media, they're very interested in the global situation because it provides interesting material for viewing. And therefore, I encourage you too to take on the world history idea, and to also read fiction books about historical periods, and I have plenty of them both in Italian and in English. There at Insegna, if anyone is interested, I'm sure you can find these fiction books or historical books yourself anywhere. But if you do contact me, I'm interested in history, in world history, and I'm interested also to see how humankind develops and whether there have been any changes in our spirit and in our emotions. I don't perceive many, but there are improvements. But good and evil seem to be present all along the way in our historical timeline. Basically, it's inevitable somehow because of the passage of time and the changes that occur over time. You can't go back, but history gives us a good clue of how to proceed. But then there are the twists and turns, things that are out of our hands, out of the perspective of a government. In other words, what happens in Australia is okay, but what about the rest of the world? Does that affect us? Of course it does. And that's why understanding reaching understanding of our societies via history is important. But history is written by people who succeeded. There are a lot of victims in history. They probably didn't have time to write anything, but occasionally get the odd recount of exactly what happened. And before the invasion is one of those examples. Because our indigenous populations here for 40, 50,000 years, didn't manage to develop writing as such, like they did in China 5,000 years ago, and in Syria, in the Middle East, and Europe and Egypt. There are examples of writings, but the writings of more indigenous people in certain parts of the world is done through paintings, pictures. And if the population is not great, then it sort of remains, in that period of time. Now it's 11:30, and I think I've said enough there. I'm going to start now with many churchmen during the Middle Ages. Guess what? They were also feudal lords of a manor. So in other words, they didn't not only control the spirit and the social amenities of the people at the time through the church, but they also controlled the manor, and they had to provide soldiers, and they had to collect taxes. You can imagine, so some of them were too much into temporal power, even though they were priests or monks. Interesting. Here we go. Before I start, of course, my compulsory cheers. We must remember, too, that in the Middle Ages, the Church possessed a great deal more worldly power than it does in most European countries today. That's a fact, and it affected all of its thinking, its theology, and whatever was developed in the church in terms of guidance for the people. And that's how it was. Many estates were owned not by barons or knights, but by monasteries. So that often the abbot or head of a monastery was also a feudal vassal who was bound to ride into battle for his lord, the king, from whom he held his land. So the king owned the land, but then passed it on to his noblemen and vassals, and they had obligations towards him in terms of providing the military and collecting the taxes and anything else really that he wanted. They would ask, "Could you do this for me?" Arranged marriages, trying to keep the peace within the counties, etc. Bishops too were often rich landowners, bound on the one hand to obey their feudal lord, the king, and on the other to obey the Pope, the supreme ruler of the whole church. So there are many kings, but one Pope. Let's not forget that. Churchmen also had the right to be tried in special church law courts. In fact, the state could not enter a monastery if somebody killed somebody. It says, "We'll handle it." That's what the monasteries would say. So the soldiers weren't allowed to go in. So in a lot of our films of historical perspectives, they actually show this, that the soldiers or whoever has to stop in front of the monastery. They're not allowed in. So churchmen also had the right to be tried in special church law courts. Answer that. Okay. Whose penalties were not as severe as those of the king's courts or the baron's courts, in which laymen had to stand trial. So there's a clear division in English law too between between the state and the church laws, and there's quite a division. All right, quarrels about powers of church and state. Of course, when there is a problem, it shows up. Moreover, because priests and monks were almost the only educated people, as they had been in the Dark Ages, they often held important positions in the government of the state as well as in that of the church. So they had to, they could read and write, they knew the numbers. You had to be educated. You can't run a government without the power of the pen. You can conquer with the soldiers, but really the maintenance of the state depends very much on the education of the bureaucrats. The bureaucrats have got a very important part to play in modern governments as well. And you need the very best there with the best of intentions. Because you get a bureaucrat with bad intentions, we're in trouble. For these reasons, there were often struggles for power between kings and archbishops, between emperors and popes, between church and state. The story of two of these struggles will help you to remember the great importance of the church in the Middle Ages. The one that I remember always is between Frederick II and the Pope. The emperor went to see the Pope and in Rome, and it was winter time and it was snowing, and the Pope said, "I'm not going to see you. Before I see you, you've got to stay out there 3 days and walk up and down." And the emperor did. The Pope humbles the emperor. That's one of the stories. Let's see what happens here. While William I was establishing his rule in England, a great quarrel took place between Pope Gregory VII and the German king Henry IV, who later took the title first used by Charlemagne of Holy Roman Emperor. A long war was fought to decide which of the two rulers should have the right to appoint bishops in the emperor's dominions of Germany and northern Italy. The struggle went on indecisively for many years, but at one stage the emperor's subjects felt so strongly that the church was right that Henry had to humble himself to save his crown. In 1077, he waited for 3 days, barefooted in the snow. So it wasn't Frederick II, it was this Henry. It was Henry IV. So I was wrong there, but anyway, the story was still the same. Barefooted in the snow and in the courtyard of the castle at Canossa, where the Pope was staying. Only then was he admitted to beg for forgiveness. "Forgive me, dear Pope, you were right. I cannot appoint your bishops or cardinals. You're the only one who can do it." Henry II makes Becket Archbishop and Chancellor. Another one. Another famous quarrel between church and state took place about 100 years later in England. William the Conqueror's great-grandson, King Henry II, appointed a clever churchman named Thomas Becket to be his chancellor. In medieval England, the chancellor was the chief servant or minister of the king, and he did much of the work that is done by both the prime minister and the treasurer in a modern government. So he had the power of the purse, and he also made decisions. A few years later, Henry made his gay and pleasure-loving chancellor of Archbishop of Canterbury as well. So he made his gay, he was happy. And pleasure-loving chancellor, so Becket must have loved a good time. Okay, but much of the king's surprise, this caused Becket to become very serious about his religious duties. And we've got an example right now in the football club. A guy becomes a CEO of Essendon, and what happens is he's also a highfalutin person in his church, and he says, "No, I'm going to give this up because we believe in certain things." And the people say, "Well, if you believe in that, you can't stay here." And so he decides to go with the church. Simple matter. Resolved. Becket martyrdom and Henry II's repentance in 1170. So Henry decided that it would be best to try all men accused of crimes, including churchmen, in his own royal courts. So he says, well, I've given you all this power, but who's going to judge you? So I'm going to do it. As Archbishop, Thomas felt that he could not conscientiously agree to this. He said, no, you can't do that. I'm an Archbishop. I belong to the church, even though I give you my services. You can't try me. And the old friends quarrelled. He says, no. Harry says, I'm the king. Here, this is England. In a fit of temper one day in 1170, Henry exclaimed, will no one rid me of this turbulent priest? 4 knights, wishing to gain the king's favour, rushed off to Canterbury and murdered Becket on the steps of an altar in the cathedral. Nice way to go. So great was the horror aroused among the people by this crime that the proud king finally went to Canterbury and allowed himself to be scourged by every one of the 80 monks in the cathedral. So they said, you're a rotten, but Becket was dead by then. In a fit of rage. It's interesting. So that's it. It just shows you, this chapter just showed you the power of the church. And I've sort of watched a bit of this, history lately during my time with the Vikings on Netflix. And then, of course, the Last Kingdom as well. The Last Kingdom was more appropriate to this. So you can find quite a lot on YouTube or Netflix relating to this historical periods. Go for it. Enjoy yourself. So next time I think we're going to go to the Crusades, the church demise in the Middle East. That's Earth to Rule Resurrection, a series that everyone should watch because it's totally historically in favour of Islam. And the Christians and the Mongols receive a real bashing in that series. Well, it's interesting. This is all interesting. Very happy for that. Now, we got to China. This one here, it's called the 8 Kings Insurrection in the Western Jin Dynasty. In 265, that's after the birth of Christ, Sima Yan forced Emperor Wei Di to give up the throne and proclaimed himself the emperor. Sima Yan was the Emperor Wu Di of the Jin dynasty. The state was called Jin, which is known as the Western Jin dynasty in history, with its capital at Luoyang. The Western Jin dynasty troops wiped out Wu and reunified the country. In the early years of the Western Jin dynasty, the government implemented a series of policies to encourage farmers' enthusiasm in farming, raising silkworm, reclamation of wasteland, and increase in production. Over a period of more than 2 years, the number of households and the total population increased by more than 1,300,000 over 2 years, and a brief prosperity occurred. That's under the Jin dynasty, the Western Jin dynasty. In order to keep the world of Sima family, Emperor Wu Di of the Jin dynasty restated the ancient system of employment, I suppose, and 27 kings from the Sima family were stationed around. So a bit what Napoleon did later in France. He put all his family in the various states of Europe. So that's what this emperor decided. Okay, I'm the emperor. I'll create, I'll call them kings, and they can rule their own areas. And then I'll pitch one against the other. I'll always remain strong. Shortly in but he didn't count. He didn't account for certain things in human history. Shortly, internal strife arose among the Sima family. The 8 kings, including Lun, king of Zhao, Wei, king of Chu, and others, were fighting for imperial power from 291 to 306. Don't forget that this time Rome was still in, Constantinople fought battle in 313. It's around that time, which lasted as long as 16 years. So they fought. In order to strengthen their power, the 8 kings made use of the northern minority forces. Thus the Huns, the Jianbei, the GS, and other military forces pushed deep into the central plains, and the northern regions experienced unprecedented upheaval. In 304, Liu Yuan, leader of the Huns, started a war and gradually took control of most of the land of Bingzhou. In 308, Liu Yuan proclaimed himself emperor in Pingyang, today's Linfen Shaanxi province, and sent troops to attack Luoyang. In 316, the Hun army overran Chang'an, captured Emperor Mindi of the Jin dynasty. In less than 40 years, the Western Jin dynasty perished after brief reunification. They didn't last long. They divided up and then they got caught in their own little plains. And today I thought we would look at something here because, we need to, here, we need to learn about China. I'm trying to do, here we are, sorry. Oh, well, I'm not going to spend any more time on this. That's it, sorry. What I wanted to do there was basically show you the importance of knowing the Chinese, the maps of China and the various regions of China. Welcome to Paula Mata. So that's important to learn about China's. Here we are. I'm trying still to. I might succeed. Wait on. Come on. Oop. No, I'm still not having much luck. Okay. Well, you can look it up yourselves. I've got here. Oh, here we are. Oh, yeah. I've got it. That's China there, the northern part of China. Notice there, Jixi, Harbin, Kikiba. But this doesn't give me the regions' names. But these are the regions. Okay, and it's important to go through China's a big place, and this is towards Tibet there, and you got a lot of sea around China's boundaries. Big power, China for many, many centuries and millennia. So it's really worthwhile doing a study of China in today's world because, things have improved over there as well. And the more we know about Chinese history, the better it is. So we can understand the people and the policies as time goes on. And I'm trying to, language and history are very closely connected. The other one that's connected is this another one that I am the northern part of America. Let me see here. There we are. Okay. That's another one. From China, now we got to North America. Look at this. Here we go. Look. That's Europe here. You cross the Atlantic. You got to the north here. And you've got, see, Norway, Sweden, Ireland, United Kingdom, Ireland, Iceland. It's quite a fair way from Norway. And the Vikings used to go to Iceland. They went to Iceland and settled down. And then from there they went to Greenland, here, there. And of course from there, since they were good sailors, they travelled across. And further north here, you can see, where the white is, there's at that time there's a connection, you can go over the ice. So some of the population then came to the Americas here. And then you've got a lot of internal, and you've got the connection to South America through the central part of America, and you go right to the bottom here, and then you've got Antarctica further down, and people didn't go there for a long time. Okay, so that's where we are. Here we are. That's it. Let's go back now to me. Am I still on? Yes, I am. I thought I lost it when I tried to do different things with my, technical things here. I really get it terrible. Anyway, I'll bring them on video. That means you, but I'm not doing that now because I want to continue. So it's 11:51. I haven't stuffed up all that much, just a little bit today. Now, North America, we were talking about the populations there and which types of people arrived in North America over the centuries. And there's a bit of a study at the moment in America relating to where did the Americans, the original Americans, indigenous people come from. And of course, because America is such a powerful and knowledgeable country in terms of science too, today, and they're doing a lot of studies in genomics here, they call it. I'm just going to read it to you now. It's a bit technical, but it doesn't matter. The human T-cell lymphotrophic virus HTLV-1 is a virus transmitted through exchange of bodily fluids and from mother to child through breast milk. The mother-to-child transmission mimics a hereditary trait, although such transmission from maternal carriers is less than 100%. The HTLV virus genome has been mapped, allowing identification of 4 major strains and analysis of their antiquity through mutations. So they change over time. The highest geographic concentration of the strain, HLTV-1, are in sub-Saharan Africa and Japan. So the original people in America, through these genomic studies, they put the original people who went to America in the Saharan Africa, sub-Saharan Africa and Japan. How they get there, don't know. In Japan, it occurs in its highest concentration on Kyushu, one of the islands. It is also present among African descendants and native populations in the Caribbean region and South America. It is rare in Central America and North America, Its distribution in the Americas have been regarded as due to importation with the slave trade. So you have to eliminate that possibility of ancient peoples coming from there. But the Ainu have developed antibodies to HTLV-1, indicating its endemicity to the Ainu and its antiquity in Japan. So Japan could be, the Japanese could be the ancient Americans. A subtype A has been defined and identified among the Japanese, including Ainu, and among Caribbean and South American isolates. A subtype B has been identified in Japan and in India. That's another one. In 1995, Native Americans in coastal British Columbia were found to have both subtypes A and B. So some of them could have come from India. And we used to call the North Americans, indigenous people, Indians. That's in the films and the television series of the 50s that I was watching. Bone marrow specimen from Andean mummy, about 1,500 years old, were reported to have shown the presence of the A subtype. So in other words, from Japan, the Ainu section. The finding ignited controversy with contention that the sample DNA was insufficiently complete for the conclusion and that the result reflected modern contamination. Contamination means you can't really rely on it because, it could be from other sources. And so there's an attack. Whenever a theory gets overpowered by another, then the people from the original ideas sort of complain, etc., etc., etc. However, a reanalysis indicated that DNA sequences were consistent with, but not definitely from, the cosmopolitan clade subtype A. In other words, from the original Japan, Ainu, and through the northern part into the Americas. The presence of subtypes A and B in the Americas is suggestive of a Native American source population related to the Ainu ancestors, the Jomon. Okay, so you got Ainu ancestors and Jomon. You can look them up. Now that's enough. It's enough for today. For this, that's enough. Next time will be physical anthropology. I like to do a bit of this because it's totally foreign to me, and I'll take it easy as well because I'm sure you're in the same situation. We're in the same boat, as they say. In other words, we don't know enough. Now, what happens here in Australia, our indigenous populations here? How we are doing the bit on health and medicine in the indigenous peoples before the settlement by Captain Arthur Phillip and therefore the invasion of Australia. Before that, there was medicine as well amongst the indigenous people. You never hear about this. So how did they do, for example, how were treatment of injuries? Here we go. For ordinary gashes or cuts, the treatment was simple. The doctor put a pad of mud, clay or ashes on the wound. Sometimes the cut was smeared with animal fat. In northwestern Queensland, mud and fat were mixed together. In some tribes, a deep wound was closed with an eagle hawk feather before being bandaged with paper bark and kangaroo skin. That's another one, kangaroo skin used in medicine. Other groups used a pad of leaves or charcoal in Queensland to stop bleeding. So, pad of leaves or charcoal. Burns were smeared with animal fat or with sap from certain trees. Which ones, we don't know. A broken leg or arm was a serious matter to people always on the move. In some areas, no treatment was attempted. Once, something happened, you lived with it. The broken limb was left to knit as best as it could by its own devices. This could make a man a cripple or leave him with a twisted limb. In some groups, the broken limb was set in a jacket of mud or clay, just as plaster of Paris is still used today. New South Wales people bound a break tightly between two sheets of bark. In northern Queensland, splints were used. Sticks were bound around the broken arm or leg, hoping that it would straighten up. Bleeding was a common cure for snake bite. Snake bite, you bled. In New South Wales, the victim squatted down and pinched the wound to make the blood flow, then put a heated possum skin on the bite. The treatment was continued for 2 hours. After that, the poisonous blood was sucked out. On the lower Murray River, among other places, ligatures were tied above and below the bite. The vein was opened in one or more places. Later, the ligatures were untied. In Queensland, the patient was given a steam bath after the ligatures were tied. He lay for several hours on dampened leafy branches spread over hot ashes. Some groups disinfected the wound by burning it with a fire stick. For centipede or scorpion bites, the poisonous blood was sucked out, the bite then being cut to make the blood flow freely. Bleeding used. So that was the treatment of gash and cuts, broken legs and arms, and burns as snake bites. That's enough for today for me, because it's, the time is running, so we've done enough there. That's an interesting one, that our Aboriginal people, the Indigenous people of Australia, actually had ideas of health and well-being, and they looked after each other that way. Interesting. Now, we got to our friend, A.B. Patterson. Banjo Patterson. He was a great guy, this one. Great Australian. This poem is a long one. It's called The Pearl Diver. Kenzo Makami, the diver, sturdy and small Japanese, seeker of pearls and of pearl shells down in the depths of the sea, trudged over the bed of the ocean, searching industriously. Over the pearl grounds, the lugger drifted, a little white speck. Joe Nagasaki, the tender, holding the lifeline on deck, talked through the rope to the diver, knew when to drift or to check. Kenzo was king of his lugger, master and diver in one, diving wherever it pleased him, taking instructions from none. Hither and thither he wandered, steering by stars and by sun. Fearless he was beyond credence, looking at death eye to eye. This was his formula always. All men go dead by and by. Suppose time come, no can help it. Suppose time no come, then no die. Good stuff. Dived in the depths of the Darnleys, down 20 fathom and 5. Down where by law and by reason men are forbidden to dive. Down to a pressure so awful that only the strongest survive. Sweated 4 men at the air pumps, fast as the handles could go, forcing the air down that reached him, heated and tainted and slow. Kenzo Makami, the diver, stayed 7 minutes below, 7 minutes underwater. Came up on deck like a dead man, paralysed body and brain. Suffered while blood was returning, infinite tortures of pain. Sailed once again to the Darnleys, laughed and descended again. No one could stop him. Scarce good shells in the shallows, rarely a patch could they touch. If too much. Scarce grew the shells in the shallows, rarely a patch could they touch. Always the take was so little, always the labour so much. Always they thought of the islands held by the lumbering Dutch. Islands where shell was in plenty, lying in passage and bay, islands where divers could gather hundreds of shells in a day. But the lumbering Dutch, with their tight gunboats, hunted the divers away. Joe Nagasaki, the tender, finding the profits grow small, said, "Let us go to the islands, try for a number one haul. If we get caught, go to prison, let..." and all. Kenzo Makami, the diver, knowing full well what it meant, fatalist gambler and stoic, smiled and broad smile of content, flattened in mainsail and foresail. Really unbelievable, huh? Close to the headlands they drifted, picking up shell by ton. Piled up on deck were the oysters opening wide in the sun, when from the lee of the headland boomed the report of a gun. Once that the diver was sighted, pearl shell and lugger must go. Joe Nagasaki decided, quick was the word and the blow. Cut both the pipe and the lifeline, leaving the diver below. Wow. Kenzo Makami, the diver, failing to quite understand, pulled the haul up on the lifeline, found it was slack in his hand. Then like a little brown stoic lay down and died on the sand. Joe Nagasaki, the tender, smiling a sanctified smile, headed her straight for the gunboat, throwing out shells all the while. Then went aboard and reported, "No Maki dive in 3 mile. Dress no have got and no helmet. Diver got to shore on the spree. Plenty wind come and break rudder. Lugger get blown out to sea. Take me to Japanese consul. He help a poor Japanese." So the Dutch let him go, and they watched him as off from the islands he ran. Doubting him much, but what would you do? You have to be sure of your men. Here you wake up that nest full of hornets, the little brown men of Japan. Down in the ooze and the coral, down where earth's wonders are spread, helmeted, ghastly and swollen, Kenzo Makami lies dead. Joe Nagasaki is tender, his owner and diver instead. Wear of pearls in your necklace, comfort yourself if you can. These are the risks of the pearling, these are the ways of Japan. Plenty more Japanese diver, plenty more little brown men. This was written in the 1890s, so it's a bit of prejudice there by the looks of it, but also some admiration for the pearl diver who risked all to get some pearls. And by the way, we did visit a pearl place in northern Australia in my last journey up there with a group. That was good. Now, from there, Henry Lawson. This is called, remember, The Bush Undertaker. That's the story. You can read it. You can read it as well yourself, just by looking it up under Henry Lawson, and you got to The Bush Undertaker. And I'm going to read you one more page. There are 1, 2, another 3. It's all right. Then maybe we'll do some of the poems of Henry Lawson. Who knows? Okay. The thundering jumped up, bones is all askew, whiffed, he said. Ole on a brummy, and I'll fix them. And he leaned the dead man against a tree while he settled the bones on his shoulder and took another pull at the bottle. About a mile further on, he heard a rustling in the grass to the right, and looking around, saw another goanna gliding off sideways, with its long sneaky neck turned towards him. This puzzled the shepherd considerably, the strangest part of it being that 5 bob wouldn't touch the reptile. but slunk off with his tail down when ordered to stick him. There's something comic about them there, goannas, said the old man at last. I've seen swarms of grasshoppers and big mobs of kangaroos, but dang me if I ever see a flock of black goannas afore. On reaching the hut, the old man dumped the corpse against the wall, wrong end up, and stood scratching his head while he endeavoured to collect his muddled thoughts. But he had now placed Brumby at the correct angle, and consequently that individual fell forward and struck him a violent blow on the shoulder with the iron toes of his blucher boots. He's a dead man, he's the bush undertaker. The shock sobered him. He sprang a good yard instinctively, hitchhiking up his moleskin in preparation for flight. But a backward glance revealed to him the true cause of this supposed attack from the rear. Then he lifted the body, stood it on its feet against the chimney, and ruminated as to where he should lodge his mate for the night, not noticing that the shorter sheet of bark had slipped down and on the boots and left the face exposed. So he had the dead man's face down his feet. I expect I'll have to put you into the chimney trough for the night, Brummy, said he, turning around to confront the corpse. You can't expect me to take you into the hut, though I did it when you was in worse state than Lord. Well, the shepherd was not prepared for the awful scrutiny that gleamed on him from those empty sockets. His nerves received a shock, and it was some time before he recovered himself sufficiently to speak. He got a bit scared. Now look at here, Brummy, said he, shaking his finger severely at the delinquent. I don't want to pick up a row with you. I do as much for you and more than any other man, and well knows it. But if Fewer starts playing any of your jumped-up practical jokes on me and scaring off me after humping of your own by the holy frost, I'll kick your Tim to Jim Rags, so I will. My God, that was a lot of... it's hard to read. It's a slang, local language, slang. So that was both Henry Lawson and Benja Patterson. And now, for what I love most, and that's when I go to my, let's see if I can get it back. Let's see. Yes, no, I have to do this. Excuse me. Excuse me. Yes, I got it. Happy face when I do this and I succeed. Okay, now last week this is my trip to Darwin, Catherine, Broome, the Solskap in the middle, etc., etc. And here we are in Nitmiluk National Park. Nitmiluk National Park. Let's have a look at Nitmiluk. Here we go. That's where we were left off last time. Here. There we are. We are here. And this is a beautiful part of the trip, by the way.
Looking after you guys this morning. You can call me Tree for short.
Look at this. We took the boat. Nitmiluk National Park. And Catherine Daly as well. There you are.
3 separate boat rides essentially, and we're going to take this boat to the end of the first gorge where we'll encounter a natural rock bar. That's going to stop us going any further. So we'll be getting off and walking about 500 or 600 metres through to the second gorge. That's where we're going to get on a different boat, go to the end of the second gorge.
There you are, part of the tourist industry, boat, someone who knows the area, a tourist, and for a couple of hours, and you enjoy it immensely. Look at that. Part of the trip. Next one. And of course, I'm filming all the time.
Go a bit hard on the water this morning. I've also got a marine trawler down the back edge of my left-hand side. Just keep in mind, we are on a boat. These toilets
There you are. Okay, that's another good one. Next one. This is, Catherine River. Knit me look through Tom Padula's eyes.
businessman and politician whose name was James Chambers. James Chambers funded everything from food quotas, water, horses, men. Many scholars think that may have been a really impressive sexual expedition to the country. The reason Chambers was funding Sean.
Beautiful Australia, look at that. Wonderful. Up. There we are, next one.
Chambers was named a lot of the landmarks that he came across after Chambers and his family. So the Catherine River is named after James Chambers' second eldest daughter, Catherine Chambers. We're also in the Catherine region. We have the Flora River and Flora National Park, as well as the Edith River and Edith Pool, named after Chambers' own two daughters. There are a couple of landmarks probably not being named after James Chambers himself. Pretty typical for that era though, but something that John McDowell Stewart didn't take into consideration when he was looking.
Well, what do I say here?
Specifically for this first voyage was Nicola, which is now the name of the entire national park, and it is two Jawan words rolled into one.
I didn't want to interrupt, obviously. Okay, so that was, what about here now? More of me there. And looking on to the others as well. Here we go. As you move along, the river, you get those very nice areas that attract your attention. That's the wind. You can hear the wind. It was quite cool that morning. It was good. And now we got to another beautiful area. They say Australia has no water. Look how much water we got. That was all fresh water.
Secondly, these freshwater crocodiles, they are actually endemic to this area, meaning this is their natural habitat. The perfect example of that is this really big sandy beach we've got coming up over here on the right-hand side of the river. This is a freshwater crocodile nesting area. See, they lay their eggs very similar to the way a sea turtle does, where they come to the tops of these sandy beaches. They're going to dig a hole about 30 centimetres deep, and they'll lay a clutch of somewhere between 5 to 30 eggs, depending on the size and healthiness of that crocodile. Now,
Have a look at this. Beautiful, huh? Of course, being there is very different to watching it on camera, but still, it's a good memory. It gives you an idea of the, the boat ride that we had. And then we'll see, I think there were 2 boats involved because we stopped somewhere, and then just bear with me and you'll really see something beautiful here. It's a very interesting part of our journey.
season anyway. We have 2 seasons here at the top end. It's pretty simple if you're unaware. Wet season and dry season. Now the dry season started officially on the 1st of May. It will span all the way through to the end of October, sorry. We traditionally don't get any rain between those months. Water level down the first gorge won't change a whole lot. Our wet season though will start in November and span all the way through to the end of April. We're normally getting about 1,000 millimetres of rain on average for the season. And that will bring the river here up about 5 or 6 metres above where it's at right now. Depending on whether rainfall is actually all about a metre every hour. It's rather impressive to see. And when the river comes right up really hot,
I was very impressed with the scenery. That's why I decided to take a lot of footage. It was a beautiful, beautiful experience. Look at that.
we're getting pretty close to the end of the first gorge here. Pretty good time if you want to top the water bottle up or if you want to use the loop or just walk through to the second gorge. Pretty good time to do.
Welcome to Francis Gala.
We are coming around the last bend here now. And the toilet on this boat,
This is Catherine River, Nitmiluk, Catherine Daly, Australia.
probably wouldn't even give it half a star, so just
It was quite an experience, this boat trip.
this bend, you're probably going to notice that it's really starting to take this true shape and form, which is really lovely. Like this around here. We also have the start of that rock bar that's going to stop us going.
Now and then I had to do a board, not board. Look at this. Amazing, isn't it? There. Up. It's Australia for you, Northern Territory. We don't get this in Melbourne, and the weather was absolutely magnificent as well. Do I say something? Well, just in the first gorge, isn't it? And yeah, what a very interesting, especially what our boat driver had to say. That all these rocks are very porous and they retain water from the wet season into the dry season, and that's why all this water is here. Fantastic. We're waiting now for the boat to change boats. We're going to go for a walk, and then we'll pick up another boat. Wonderful. So we changed boats here. There, that's the boat. We have to get off. The type of boat that it is. They take people in, and now we're going to land here. That's where they stopped at. We're approaching about 400 metres to the next, to our next boat, basically. Interesting to take some pics as you walk along, which I will do, of course. So, that's it. And it's steps.
You make sure you bring all of your belongings with you. That way nobody loses anything. Now, if you don't feel up for this 500 or 600 metre walk, or you don't think you're going to make it through, or for whatever reason you just don't want to come, you don't have to come along with us. You can wait behind here under the gazebo, plenty of shade. cold water there, you're more than welcome to wait behind for us to come back. Now, if you're going to come through the rock art that I spoke about, the very first flight of stairs here, about 30 or 40 steps. When you get to the top, there's a flat concrete area. You're going to find a sign up there with some information about the rock art. If you look directly behind the sign up on the rock face about 4 or 5 metres, that's where you're going to see the art piece itself. Now, as you continue on past the rock art, you're going to go down a few more stairs, over a series of small bridges, and up one more little staircase to that flat natural rock that I spoke about. Now, even with your good hiking boots and good runners, it catches a lot of people out. So make sure you really watch your step on that flat natural rock. I don't want anybody falling over today. And if you happen to beat me through to the second gorge, I'll also ask that you don't jump on board that boat unless myself or another tour guide says it's okay to do so. Now, as you step off onto the jetty, it slopes down quite a bit straight away. Some people get a bit of a run up and almost end up in the river on the other side. It's a bit embarrassing. Don't let that be you folks. And the final thing, guys, the last one, really important. The longer we stake on this walk means less time in the second gorge. Now, that doesn't mean I want you to rush through there by any means. Take your time, take some photos. We do have to be over there in about 10 or 15 minutes.
Okay, so we've got another boat. Where's here? Look at this. Now I started taking some pictures here. Beautiful. Look at that. Of course, I love that. Good one. Oh, welcome to Assunta Lombardi. This is the trip that I took up to Darwin. These paintings are like a book to us. So that's explanation of how Indigenous history developed. Part of the group there. Wonderful area. Jawoin always used this river. And notice here. See, there. And, you can do a bit of a study of these things. And it's beautiful nature. The two Angelas near me. One is the organizer and the other one is my sister. There. We had to walk through there and admire the rocks, formation. Beautiful. And they put some of these plastic covers there in case we slipped. Magnificent part. I couldn't resist it, with the self. You don't get the chance because you're walking on your own. The others, they seem to want to do their own things and take their own photos. They don't want people to, they want to control things. So that's how it is. These are the guys who accompany us. I said, do you mind? He said, no, not at all. There we are. Nice one. Good memory. Okay. Well, where are we now?
We're in Nibelung National Park with all this lovely sandstone all around us.
And where are we now?
We're in Nibelung National Park with all this lovely sandstone all around us.
And what is your name?
My name's Trahan.
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 Well done. Now, how long have you been doing this?
I've been here 15 months, mate.
So you're enjoying the rocks, huh?
Oh, love it here. I'll be here for another long time yet.
Yeah, a lot of people have been here for a long time too, eh?
Yeah, I reckon.
Well done, mate.
Cheers,
Thank
mate.
you very much.
Enjoy the rest of your tour.
I take the opportunity to talk to people as much as I can. You know, you need cooperation in these things, of course. Nit Miluk, Catherine. There you are. And they're very careful, you know, very nice people. Where are we? Yeah. Oh. I should have got rid of this one. Here we go. We picked up the other boat here. This is a really beautiful part of the excursion. The things with the camera, you can't go out and in. You know, you can't return the camera to the other side. So these iPhones need to improve that aspect of it.
They shared a skin group, so they worked a bit to be together. I didn't stop Marla, where they madly loved the jet up to the point. We actually ended up kidnapping her. I might tell her too much more for you guys. She'd like to watch the movie. They normally air it in Australia once a year. If you suddenly put your drink in, you'll find out around the whole time. Not the only movie from here though. In 2006 we had a bit of
Let me have a look at something. I've gone over time, so I'll have to leave it for next week. Let me have a look where I am. Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay. It's quite a bit more. I'll continue next week. We're at the Nitmiluk National Park. Now, thank you very much for coming on whilst I am done this particular lesson podcast, number 51. Well, this is Tom Padula from TomPadulaTV on YouTube and Insegna Booksellers. I bid you farewell until next time. And now this particular podcast will go on my Facebook page and will stay there for quite a while. Okay, thank you very much once again. Ciao, ciao.